Okay, all right. Well, one, it's great to see everybody. I don't think we saw each other over the summer, so can't believe it's fall. Hello, nice to see everybody. I know everybody here is a volunteer. A lot of people were at a meeting that went late last night, so thank you for more time with us. So the purpose of tonight is to go through the results of the Pear Tree survey. I sent to everybody the top line from Noble House, which is 48 pages and 2,000 comments, and I know many of you went through with a fair amount of depth, so thank you. So we're all sort of on the same sheet of music. I collapsed those 48 pages into 8 slides, and I thought that if you guys just let me go through this no more than 10 minutes, that it'll just hopefully we'll all be seeing the same picture and same bullets. Andy, so you can turn your phone off.
Trying to figure out how.
There might be a button on the left-hand side. All right, okay, so let's see, starting on page 1, as you guys know, we did this survey and our goal was to get feedback from residents about their priorities and preferences down at Pear Tree to feed into a strategy. We developed it together. We had feedback from Parks and Rec Department, Parks and Rec Commission, approved by the first select person. The survey was live for just over 2 weeks, end of July, early August. We publicized the survey through email, social media, posters with QR codes at the beach, and any resident of Darien was eligible to participate. That outreach was successful. We had over 2,800 responses, which is by any measure a terrific response. I think we have had more responses than the master plan. So it's a really robust sample size that represented a cross section of demographics in town and different usage levels. So I think for me, that gives us a really clear portal into what town is looking for. So you go to page 2 in terms of what town is looking for. Since we have 2 beaches, and this should not come as a surprise, overwhelmingly, people go to Pear Tree because of its quiet nature. So 70% said that's the reason they choose it. In all of the comments, people amplified it and said it's peaceful, it's the natural beauty, it's simple, it's undeveloped. Those words just kept getting repeated. And I think the tone was, these are qualities that are worth preserving. So if you turn to page 3, not surprisingly, given that people are going for the place, when we ask about current facilities that are important to people, it's the very functional things like bathrooms and parking lots that are important because they're mostly there for the place. I think one thing to note, which we'll come back to, of all the facilities, the concession stand is the least important to people. And we'll go through a little more information on that. Turning to page 4, not surprisingly, satisfaction with the current facilities, especially the bathrooms, which are important, is low. Pear Tree's been on the horizon for, I don't know if it's 10 years or 15 years. And so with little investment, it's not a surprise that satisfaction levels are low. The good news is it should be relatively easy to fix. If you turn to page 5, we asked to get at people's priorities in another way. And said, as you think about either a renovation or a rebuild, what are the attributes that are important to people in town? So this chart looks at the attributes we asked about and rank orders them. So the ones at the top are important to over 80% of the, very important, they're important to 80% of the respondents. And the ones on the bottom are of less importance and important to a minority of people. So the things that we should focus on would be obviously the ones that are important to a lot of people. So the bathrooms, overall aesthetic, outdoor chairs, shade umbrellas, landscaping, outdoor showers. Those are all things where more than a majority of people said those are important to them. The things that people are saying or I guess they're not saying it's not important, but only a minority is saying that these things are important to them, would be the concession stand, a community room, whether it's on the first floor or the second floor, with Parks and Rec programming or not, and indoor showers. So I think one thing to think about is just for things that have low appeal, a little harder to justify continuing to invest in those types of features. I want now, since the concession stand continues to be lower on the list of priorities, just add some more facts to the concession. So as I think everybody knows, over 3 years, we've tried 3 different vendors, so 3 different operations, 3 different menus, and gross revenues have continued to be fairly marginal. So about $3,000 in revenues compared to Pear Tree, where it's about, or sorry, Weed, 90,000. So we have yet to find something that's profitable for an operator for town. We know from the survey that the concession stand is the least important aspect to facilities.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question?
Yes.
So weed is 90,000 for the summer, for the May through
That was the, I think it was like 89,000, we could get updated.
That sounds high.
That sounds
That's
really
not-
high.
I thought last year it was like 25,000. No,
Yeah.
I think last year it was around 25, and I
Then
don't have
let's
the
get
number for
the
this year.
actual, if I'm off on that, yeah,
Yeah, but
Let's
I
go
feel
do it.
like this year at some point I heard that it hit 20 or 21, kind of midway through the summer. That number sounds very high.
thank you. Okay, well, fine, if I'm off, let's, so I will follow up on what that number is. I
But
think
but
the point is-
comparatively, the
It's horrible.
concession sales at Weed are much more
Significantly
stronger.
significant.
And maybe whoever gave you
Stronger.
that number was giving you a number over
3
3
years.
years.
Possibly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Okay,
wondering.
Thank you, good, important to be, okay, so, in all surveys, not just this one, respondents overstate their interest in something, and their willingness to buy something, or their willingness to do something. So in trying to understand how people thought about the concession, if you turn to page 7, we asked, as everybody here knows, how would people feel about getting rid of the concession stand? And 80% of the respondents said they would be comfortable or likely comfortable removing the concession stand. I'm not saying advocating to remove it, I'm just sharing what the respondents to the survey said. We turned to page 8.
I guess for anybody who's watching, you should just break down that it's 50% comfortable and 30% likely comfortable, which is how you got to the 80%.
Correct. Yep, good point, thank you.
Because they don't
Thank
have
you.
the flip charts.
Yeah, thank you. And Janet, I now see that you're online, and I'm sorry I didn't email this to you. I will send it to you afterwards. So we also pulsed people on how they would think about alternatives to the existing concession stand. And I'll say here's a place where the comments really are meaningful for a lot of reasons, but I think there are a couple of conclusions. One, vending machines didn't feel like they fit with Dairy Ann's. That was good learning. Similarly, low interest in pre-ordered meal service. For everything else, there's a lot of noise. So it said 45% said they would be interested in food trucks. You read through the comments and people are sort of, so just, I think there's not a clear alternative that people are looking for.
Let me
Yeah.
read through those again, because
Yeah, so, okay, so food trucks, 45% said that they would be interested in exploring it. A staff snack bar for snacks, drinks, and ice cream, which I think is pretty similar to what we had this summer, 43%. A water fountain, which was, I think, just put in, or is
Yeah,
it
put in
now?
at the end of,
End of
middle of
August, a
August.
small water fountain,
Yeah,
so
sure.
that is it, yes, thank you, big deal. Ice cream truck, 27%, ice machine, 20%, vending machine, 13%, and then the pre-ordered meals, 10%. So, and then just knowing that there's a lot of thinking about the concession, I went through all 790 comments about the concession stand and put them into categories of what people were saying. they fell into these buckets and I'll tell you what my conclusion is from this. So 35% of the comments said in one way or another, I don't think we need it. Can't please everybody. 14% said, please keep it. It's part of the beach for me. 14% were comments on food trucks or vending machines, and truthfully split. Some people were like, I hate them. Other people said that'd be so awesome. So 14% had suggestions about food. Let's have pizza. Let's have something healthy. 8% had comments that the hours could be different. And I think what it's telling though is only 6% had a comment saying, hey, we should have a new building or we should have a nicer building, and that would make for a more attractive concession stand. And 1% had comments like, ooh, a restaurant on the water would be lovely, even though we're not obviously zoned for it. So I just wanted to share sort of the full set of what I think we learned on the concession.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes, of course you may.
When we're talking about concessions, because you were just referencing that the staff snack bar for snacks, drinks, and ice creams is similar to what we had last summer. So how do you differ between that and a concession stand? Like,
It's
you know, I mean, how do we want to?
didn't we have any things? I don't know.
So nothing hot, is that what we're saying?
Correct. It's
Okay.
like,
It's
it's,
just
so
like,
I
so no
think
hot
it's been-
dogs, burgers,
Right,
things like
correct.
that.
I think that was the intention.
item.
Right.
Okay.
And
So we wouldn't deal with sandwiches, nothing. It would be like candy and soft drinks and ice cream, chips.
yes, yeah, chips, anything prepackaged,
Okay.
long shelf life,
To make sure that we're,
but with a person, not a vending machine.
so that we're all clear on what the snack bar option would be versus the concession.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I
Good
just want
point.
to make sure.
Right. So, and now, yeah, page 10, which is a repeat, but I just wanted to, instead of leaving on the concessions, leave, and I think this chart is probably the most important, and it looks at the various aspects of a facility and what's important on a relative basis, what's important to people in town. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down to more landscaping, everything above that is important or very important to more than 60% of people in town. Everything below that is less important. So focusing on making sure whatever solution we come up with addresses the things that are important to a lot of people is should be our focus. Do you want me to go through the
Yeah,
whole
I think
list?
you should.
Okay, so just to go through them, the ones that I think are pop, or the ones not, I think, the ones that are important to more than 60% of residents, bathrooms and changing rooms, 82%. The overall aesthetics, and that's just fit and finish and quality, 79%. More Adirondack chairs and beach umbrellas, 73%. Those are all really easy things to do. Outdoor showers, 64%, more landscaping, 63%. Larger outdoor patio, important or very important to 52%. ADA accessibility, important to 39%. And here, I think the comments are great because there are people who have accessibility issues, wrote in exactly how we can improve it for
That's
them.
great.
And so I think that's a place where comments would really help us hit the mark. Concession stand, 33% said it was important or very important. Community room, 23%. Indoor showers, 23%. And a second floor community room, 21%. I promised that that would be relatively brief. Why don't I take questions, but then what I really want to hear is how this went. So any questions?
Well, the first, this is more of an overall deal, which I didn't quite realize, but truly is, the quiet nature of Pear Tree is a feature that didn't ring out in my head all during my involvement with the Pear Tree. I mean, in the RTM sense of it. But this summer grandchildren came from California and actually spent some time on Pear Tree Beach, and it was quite nice just for that quietness and for the and my 3 and 4-year-old grandchildren really enjoyed it. Yeah. Just a comment and how that turns out to be the more important thing that I never realized was, and I'm glad it came up in the survey.
Yeah, excellent. Okay.
Kara is,
Surprised me.
Kara,
Sorry.
sorry.
Talking, so then we'll come back to you in 1 second.
Well,
Jen.
you can
I think there's a lag, so I can't, sorry. It's like there's a, like, I don't,
You go first.
no, it's fine.
You get hit.
It's just-
Go ahead.
All right. Jen?
No, I just was wondering, for, like, is this question number 9 that revealed the quiet nature of Pear Tree? I mean, obviously 70%. What item was 40%? It's just not on
That
the,
one was, that was the ability to sit in the car and look at Long Island Sound. So Janet, the Noble House is still cleaning up some of those data label issues.
Got it.
And
okay,
6 weeks after the survey, we're still not totally done with it. So as soon as I have that, I'll send that around, but that's what the 40% was. I think there were a few missing pieces of information on that particular page.
And that
Okay,
makes
cool.
sense because we see so many people drive down there at sunset. I mean, and not just during the summer, in the morning, at lunch, or
Lunch,
in the
Windsor,
evening. I
yeah.
know.
That being said, I was, took note as I read through, this was before Cara ordered them, but just reading the raw comments. There were quite a few comments about people about adding berms. I mean, and like a notable amount, which is kind of counter to that. So it wasn't like 1 or 2, it was, there were a lot.
But I think they can be long.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
but there definitely was some commentary about the
Then,
berms as well.
There's
So
something
it's
about the
interesting to me.
sunset at Pear Tree, not to take it away from weed, but just the way it's positioned. It is just spectacular. And the landscaping, I think, I was happily surprised. I should say I was surprised. And then I started to think about that because one of the comments was, I hate just driving up and seeing all asphalt.
Mhm.
And so to the point about having a little berm that both is perhaps a barrier when the water is coming in, and then also kind of stresses it up a little bit. I know that there are, Janet, I know there are parents of young kids that do love to pull up and flip the top, the back up and tailgate there. And so, maybe there's opportunity to do breaks sessions in the berm, so to
Something
speak.
like
And we
that.
would need that for people to be able to get through
Right.
anyways.
Yeah. And the other
Oh,
challenge we had this summer, which just ties into the backing up and not to draw conclusions here, is, we have received complaints about people who go sit in their car, leave their car on and run their air conditioning, which violates Connecticut state statute. And that, residents will find it very, very annoying, that they're kind of getting the fumes and the noise of these people's cars. So while we know that people like to do that, the fact of the matter is, in the heat of the summer or the cold of the winter, they're not supposed to be sitting there with their
Yeah.
cars on.
There's a sign.
Yeah, a sign went up at the end of July.
Right, but I
Right.
understand,
And
but
it went up at the
it happens.
right at the
Yeah.
gate entrance.
So
Which was-
yeah.
Huge enough for anybody to see, but
Okay,
some
but we
people
do
just
have to kind of.
still don't see it.
Yeah,
And
we
that's
hear
an
that comment a lot, but that's an
yeah,
educational
that's an
piece that people need to be aware of, that we know they
Right.
like to do that, but practically speaking.
Yeah, and we can come up with a funny phrase, like, you're coming for the sunset, don't kill the, whatever, right? Some kind of.
Well, we can,
And Patty, to your point about this,
It was just kind of all sprinkled through comment.
I
I have
think
to like
she's saying
comment
it's
by
a
comment.
comment.
Yeah.
I have to really read them all.
Right, and I was just gonna add to Patty's point, when in question 10, when we asked what activities do you typically engage in when visiting Fairfield Point Beach, the number one thing for 81%, on the game show, is enjoy the scenery, water view, and or sunset. It's, people are going because it's quiet and they're going for the scenery.
Or did you know it's the kind of a person who doesn't like seeing the boats in the harbor? I was like.
That's right, don't live on the coast.
Don't come to
Yep,
the
we'll get
beach.
rid of them all.
I know
Don't come to
that's
the beach.
But I agree, there were so many kind of very specific ones that I think for a number of different things going forward that can help us. As you said, ADA, and then the next time I was at the beach, I purposely, because I've been hearing you say that, but I purposely drove over to where the picnic tables are. To check even further what happens if somebody is in a wheelchair, right? Can they get up anywhere onto that beach? And they can't.
Not
It's
so
that
much.
thing. And wouldn't you know it? Shit, 2 days later, there was a woman in a wheelchair. That was the first person I've ever seen in a wheelchair. And I went over and I asked, can I help you? I asked the husband and the wife. They were like, oh, we got it. We're just coming for the view. So they sat there for the view. But boy, did it hit me. Like, that's just not that hard. I mean, at town hall, remember, we didn't have, who's been on the RTM forever with me, right? And you as well, right? We didn't have that ramp at that front stairs,
No.
right? And then now we do. And so that's something really probably pretty simple and necessary for
Well,
us to do.
there's a few people that come in walkers and pick their walker up and then take a couple of steps in the sand and to get over towards the main tree by the gazebo and sit there. She comes almost daily. There's another gentleman that comes and is handicapped and sits in his car because I don't think he can get out of it, quite honestly. There's another gentleman that's been there quite a few times in a wheelchair. So it's not something that happens every day, but it's not something that happens only once a month. So it's something that I think we had looked into this a long time ago. That putting a mat down and running it into the water area where people could at least get down, if not to the water, to the middle of the beach and sit with their families in the sand area. I don't remember where that ever went. Obviously, what we ended up doing, I think, was getting the wheelchairs that go in the sand with the great big rubber wheels. At one point, we had them down at Pear Tree and at Weed. I don't know where they ended up.
They're still at both beaches, but they're in the lifeguard rooms. You have to know to ask for them.
Oh, okay, because they were outside in a container and it
Got it.
said wheelchair for beach access. So it was there on the outside.
So that's feedback for Pam to give to the lifeguards, and maybe that's something we can change for
Maybe we
next.
should put it outside.
And or
Yeah.
signage.
Yeah,
All right, so now I'm gonna ask a more pointed question. If people go back to page 10. Do people think that the first items and the items through ADA accessibility are the ones that we should focus on? Or does that not feel like the right list to do?
I thought it was an impressive number of people that responded. And when you just made the quote that was indeed more than the master plan survey.
Yeah.
That for us to disregard the responses here, I think would not be what our job is. So I would say, let's focus on the top section.
Where's everybody else on the list?
About the patio and how that's gonna work with water coming in and, we would have to figure out how that would be engineered and structured so that it doesn't just wash away. So, I think that we would need to do a lot of research on that before we do it, so that would be. I think it's a great idea, but I think that we're gonna have to put some thought into it.
Agreed on that.
I think on page 2, the major component on this whole survey was 70% of quiet nature of Pear Tree. And I think that we need to focus on too, without making it too overwhelming. The bathrooms and changing rooms, from what I hear down there and see down there, need to be cleaned up and taken care of. The Adirondacks and beach chairs, everybody seems to enjoy. The beach umbrellas and the beach, and the tables over by the concession stand were very nice to have this year in blue. We now have brown ones, and the blue ones are over in the picnic area. So the ones that are there the other day now, also have one seat missing, so someone in a wheelchair can pull up to the table. So that's a plus.
Cheryl, do the new brown ones have a hole for an umbrella?
I believe so, but the umbrellas have been put away. Now, they're in the lifeguard stations. The outdoor showers, as far as the outdoor shower goes, the back beach shower, or the, what's that called now? The West Beach hasn't worked in 3 years. So, I don't understand why that shower can't be fixed and taken care of. The landscaping down there has got to be improved. I mean, it's just, this is my opinion, but I also can see 63% other people felt the same way, that it's gotta be fixed. And you talked about
Are you
that.
ripping out the goldenrod or am I?
The one piece of
Double
goldenrod.
I'll say you.
I
did it.
mean, first off, last night when you discussed that, I almost went off the paddock, off the reservation rather. It's goldenrod. 1 million people are allergic to goldenrod, and it's sitting on each side of the public shower, where 90% of the people are in and out of during the day. The children are there, and people coming out of there sneezing and coughing and everything else, and I'm like, oh my God. But I left it there. I didn't take it out.
Or did I?
I was a good girl and didn't take it out. You don't know how tempted I was. But, so landscaping is an issue, and you had talked about putting some things around
So
just
just,
down there.
yeah, landscape, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I think landscaping, sure, sorry. too loud.
It's a
It's
pup.
hooked in back.
It's been trying to study that.
Maybe because it doesn't cost me any.
See, I start talking and then they want to close the door. Sorry. It's too loud. So I think, we have our tour this Sunday. I've been down there with a couple of members of the commission talking about where we think we could actually help with some of the beautification dollars. And, as we talked yesterday, the time is now, like, if we're going to start putting certain things in, we need to look into that sooner rather than later. So we'll be happy to walk through and share some more opinions in terms of landscaping, but I was certainly pleased to see, that high of a level of response in terms of, and I seriously do. I mean, for the amount of money that we have, 18K,
We're not gonna have all that for Fair Tree.
I understand.
And honestly, I think, when we were looking at this a few years ago, Dan Biggs had landscaping plans he knew what kind of plants with them. I think we'd really want professional assistance. I'm a little reluctant to just have some volunteers and say, well, let's grab one of these and one of those, I think.
Agreed. And so I think that also bleeds into with the goldenrod conversation and just the flower boxes that were put up by the beautification committee. That also goes into the next one underneath, right, which is the 52% for a larger outdoor patio, which I found very interesting. What we had discussed was, okay, around the gazebo and concession stand, if we were able to just fill that in with concrete. And Sarah, I do understand your point. If water's rushing through that, is concrete the best? There might be a better material to work with it, but that is so counterintuitive to page 9, the previous one, which is how much people don't really give a shit about concessions. And like, if we were going to do that, then why? Like, to me, my general feeling here is,
Yeah, you got the concession, make the patio.
Yeah, put it over in that area and be able to use that. Everything I'm reading and seeing here is, most people want to show up and they want to bring their own food, they want to bring their own drinks, they want to be able to. So if we're able to give them a better space, and especially if that is somehow ADA compliant and some sort of hard surface, and it's just as easy where you could have family in the patio or in the gazebo, and you could have, some nice tables or high tops or whatever else is right there. answers the idea of the larger outdoor patio. It's ADA compliant. And realistically, I don't think it's going to take anything away from if there's no concession there. So that was,
Chris,
yeah.
can I just chime in real quick? It does feel to me like the surveys themselves, the results themselves do conflict from question to question. For example, in question 14, part B, how important are the following facilities at Pear Tree Point Beach to you? B, concession stand. 30% people said neutral or neutral, and then almost 3%, so even more than neutral, said it was important. But yet on question, later on, to the question I think you're talking about, question 18, I see that says, 50% of people says, I'm comfortable with the removal of concession stand. I don't use the concession stand. But yet there's like another 50% of people that are saying, would be either disappointed or likely comfortable if there were other alternatives. So I don't think, from what I'm seeing here, I don't see it being so obvious that most people are saying they don't care about the concession stand and they don't want it.
But when it came to alternatives, the first alternative being food trucks was the highest rated, right?
Right. That's for the people that said within the alternatives, but a lot of people were also just neutral or satisfied.
So I don't know.
With what I think having a concession stand that people are currently like, they may not want to make it more, there's not more to it that they want. Maybe they're okay with what's there, but I don't think people are okay with removing that like altogether.
But if you look at how many people use concession stand, $3,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when it comes to concession stand, in addition to the survey data, we have the results in dollars talk. And the fact of the matter is, last year we put in a very well experienced food vendor. She does Chelsea Pear, she runs restaurants, she does the Rote Nail Club, she does weddings. And she did just fine at Wheat Beach and could not make a go of it with salads and healthy menu and everything. People said if you would have good food and healthy food, we would use it, and we provided it. And she said, I have to close down. I'm losing money here. I've had days where I've had $5 in sales and I just cannot do that, especially coming out of the pandemic.
I'm just curious.
Last year was the same menu as Wheat Beach.
Because there were a lot of comments that you had food like
We
Wheat
did.
Beach, and I was like, it was the same menu.
We did. It was the
wasn't
same menu.
Yeah.
It
Like,
was
or
the
if you
same.
had healthy food, I'm like, we did. If you had bacon,
Right.
bacon and cheese, we did. I'm like,
Right. So last year we did,
Yeah.
and as this is somebody that I have a lot of confidence in, that
Yeah.
she knows how to run a food service. She did
Right.
fine at Wheat Beach this summer. So then she wouldn't touch it this year. She said, I'll happy to come back to Wheat. I will not come back to Pear Tree. So then we didn't think we had anybody. And then Pam was able to find this local woman.
Right.
And we have not seen the numbers yet. I asked to have them for last night's commission meeting and they weren't available yet. But my sense is that they weren't very, she didn't do a lot
The other
of
thing about,
business. So yes, Shannon, I see the survey and it had some quick 50 information, but the fact of the matter is we've had, Uncle's Deli, who's an established business owner. We've had, Nikki Gleckas, who's an established, food service business owner. We've had this third person. People can, it's, and I've made this, comment to Cara in the past. It's like, when some, store in town closes, you're like, oh, I'm so sad that store's closing. I loved it. And you're like, oh, I haven't been there 2 years. You like the idea of it and you like to know it's there if you want something from it,
Right.
but you don't actually go that
I
often.
think interesting part of the comments, if you really read through all the concession comments, which I know I did, and I know you did. It's like, no, I want the concession stand, it brings back nostalgic memories. I don't use it, but other people might like it. I think it should still be there, but I don't use it. And it's like, all right, there's a lot of people that say, yeah, it's important for the beach effect to have a concession stand, but you don't use it. And those questions came first, and then later on when we said, well, we can't afford to keep this open. Are you comfortable with closing it? Well, then I was like, yeah, it's fine. Let's close it. But it's like, you can't just have it because you think a beach should have it. And so I feel like the order of the questions, maybe if we started with, do you know that the concession stand, like maybe they would have changed the answers to the other ones. So I'm more comfortable with, we don't need it for those. And if you crawl through those comments, it's pretty evident. So many people wrote they wanted it, but they don't use it. I mean, it was astounding. I don't know, you categorized all of that.
I was like, really? Really?
There are people like, you know, and I'm one of those people, I like the idea of a snack bar. I
Yeah.
grew up always having a snack bar at a beach.
Yes.
I have great memories of it. I do use them. There's certain beaches we go to out of town that if you are on the property, you have to use the snack bar. You can't bring your own food. Others have minimums, that kind of situation. So I think people conceptually like it, but the numbers aren't.
Yeah, they are.
Sadly, the numbers aren't there.
No, but
Yeah,
we have a beach there.
Can I make one
Yeah.
other, can I make one point though
Yes.
also? Can we look at the fact that if we do get rid of the concession stand, how we can improve the bathroom, the overall aesthetics, possibly a deck out back there, and use the space that the concession, the kitchen, whatever area that's there, more usefully for improving the bathroom and storage or whatever we will require. I mean, use that space that's available.
Well, we have to be careful with FEMA.
Well, no. I'm
Starting
talking
to-
about not destroying.
Because I have
buildings.
visions of different things too, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking, let's get rid of the kitchen, the concession stand interior.
Yeah,
We can do any maintenance we want down
yeah,
there and should be doing. So if we were to, and I'm just throwing this out there, if we were to gut the kitchen area, we could, I think, possibly open it up some way to keep the roof over it and then somehow open up the three sides.
At the garage doors.
Okay, can I
Okay,
am
I'm
gonna
not sure.
interrupt you. I want to step back and make sure we're clear on what the charge of this group is.
yeah.
Good point, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
It's not,
I mean,
This
it's not
is
our
not the
job
building
to,
committee.
yeah,
right.
yeah.
This
We're not
is-
engineers.
No, but I'm saying
No,
from
I
from
understand.
my building committee.
I understand, but the.
I'm on that building.
Okay, which may or may not even be in existence at this point, that's another question mark.
Well, we are because we have permits out.
Okay, but just to refresh,
Yes.
the charge of this committee
Right.
was to do the homework, to draw conclusions and recommend to the Parks and Rec Commission
Right.
what the townspeople would like to see happen at Pear Tree, where they feel that the needs and wants are. From that, the commission will accept or not, or whatever, take those and then make a recommendation to the selectmen about, all right, based on what these are the objectives for a renovation. And this group could form those objectives and just say, based on what we've learned, we feel that the town, the objective should be to improve Pear Tree Point Beach, the property, to address the following things. The commission would either take that and say, yep, we agree, or tweak it, whatever. That would go to the selectmen, who, if they feel inclined to move forward with a project, would either reactivate the building committee, reformulate the building committee. I can't speak to how that would happen. I cannot, I just don't know. And then it would be a building committee's job
To do that.
to do that. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole
But we
to,
help to
far.
prioritize, basically,
yes,
what.
right.
It's so clear it's the bathrooms.
Yes,
So
and then
it's
how could the
heating and
building
heating.
committee, there would be their
Right.
job to say, how can we accomplish that within whatever money we're told we can have, within FEMA regulations and the limitations on the property. Yes, the application is into Connecticut Deep for the part of the project, which includes raising the parking lot to address the flooding, fixing the boat ramp, and possibly dredging. That application is in process. Apparently they are supposed to respond to us by October 20th, but whether they flow through their own deadlines or not, I don't know. But I just want to be clear that we're not here to solve for building design. We're here to say, what does this information tell us, that we're then going to go to the commission and say, based on the survey and why we feel this is representative of the town's needs and desires, these are the type of things that a renovation project should address. Okay. So just want to be
But
clear on
I
that.
bet Sarah and Sandy who weigh in on the concession, so what's your perspective?
I just totally agree that the concession just isn't gonna, it doesn't make it, people don't want it.
Same. Yeah,
Yes.
sir.
And maybe it's not, a concession the way it is because of the kitchen and all that is, not what people feel are necessary. But I see that in question 17, almost the same amount of people that said food, that they would prefer food trucks would also prefer still at least a staffed snack bar for snacks, drinks, and ice cream. Is that something that could still be offered?
So I feel like that's what we did this summer. So I think
Right.
getting sales data from this summer would help inform that. I think in surveys, people will overrepresent their intention to do something. So I think the sales data is really important for judging what people will actually do.
Right, but this summer is kind of an interesting summer in that it's the first real summer coming out of COVID, right? And all the traveling is back.
But that means the traveling will continue.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I hear what you're saying, but it's just that we've seen this, if you're running a Fortune 500 company, they're doing layoffs today, right? The market, 75 basis points, who's fired, who's laid off, and what division are we taking out? The lower part is what would be taken out. And I struggle with that because the same thing, I like to know that there is a snack bar. I can't.
well, I don't think it's so much what we,
Ever using it. I do remember always using it at Wee Beach with my kids. And I can't ever remember using it at Pear Tree. Because we did
Right.
just pull up our cars and bring our food there. So.
right, but I don't know that it matters so much what we do personally, right? I'm just looking at the data.
There's a lot of history here of people who have lived here for a long time, ranging in different ages and different times that we've been here. And I mean, Cheryl's there a lot, I'm there a lot, so we're trying to be as observant as we can. And again, I love seeing the parents come up, particularly the families and the dads on Fridays, and come down and open their car and participate, but they are bringing their own stuff. So, I mean, I have photos and videos, made sure that I could document stuff throughout the summer.
Okay, I'm just going by this question. I'm just going by what I'm seeing on the data.
Yeah, I
That there's
understand.
43% of people said, the 45% of 0.4, and I'm sure there's some overlap here too, right? Because it's not, it wasn't like you can only choose one.
But it
Option.
wasn't them saying, oh, but if you had the option of a food truck, if you had the option of the thing that 2 years ago, you were there, you saw that it was that ice cream truck. It was like the Pied Piper. He rang the bell. There were
So-
kids all around the corner running through the parking lot.
So funny you mentioned
That works.
Yeah.
We know that works.
so Jane, I was going to say, I mean, for every time we're down there, I'd love to, we know Jose who runs that truck, the Mr. Softy. If he wasn't all cash, he'd probably tell me how much he made, but like, I'm betting he made more than 3,000 over the summer down there for sure.
Right.
And so if I'm looking at that, it's like,
Wow.
There are a lot.
oh God, and yes, and every single kid runs over immediately, and it's
Yeah.
like, here you go, here you go, here you go, and great guy, but you didn't see that same line at concession at all. So
I have 2 points about the concession. We just did snacks and drinks. So how much money is the concessionaire going to make on snacks and drinks? And could they stay open selling snacks and ice cream and drinks? No, they're not. And then you have the people, if you read through the comments again, saying, I purposely go to Pear Tree Point because I want my kids to eat healthy. I don't even want the ice cream truck there. Like there's the people that are going there. If they wanted their kids to have the food at the beach, they go to Wee Beach, and you have this whole undercurrent of people. And I know you read through the comments that were saying like, no, I don't want that. And I don't want my kids to be begging me for that thing at the snack bar that the other kids are eating. So there is a contingency of that as well. But I do think even if we did do, I mean, I know we chose to put that as an option. I don't know that it's a feasible option to have just drinks and snacks and ice cream, that any concessionaire could make money on that and could stay in business with that.
And who would want to take that on?
Yeah, right. Who would want to do that?
And then therefore, is it worth dedicating the space to if we did use that square footage in some other,
In a different way.
in some other manner, yeah. Yeah, and the snacker weed also gets the benefit of that's where all the town camps go. They bring the kids down by busload, and the kids do, there's a time period where they all line up, and they, trust me, because I had a 3-year-old who was hungry, and there was about a 25 kid line. And they just all line up, and they either get their lunches, whatever, and we, the operator, she's getting a lot of business from all of those day camp kids who go down there pretty much every day of the week. I think they stagger which groups they're in which day.
They do have more camps at Weed, but we do have the Y camps at Pear Tree.
Oh, they're there as well.
Uh-huh, and, unfortunately, the days that the camp were, kids were there, the concession stand was closed. So they'd all come from the other end of the beach over to the concession stands, and their counselors go, oh, it's closed. And then you've got the little kids with their money in hand wanting their ice cream or snacks. And so they were kind of saying, well, maybe when we go back to the Y, we'll try and figure something out. So that was another issue where she was closed this year when they were there. And I had talked to her about trying to stay open, at least for that day. I think it was twice a week.
That echoes, though, that echoes what happened last year, right? And so that was one agreed healthy food, but then they couldn't stay open as much, and then this lovely lady tried to do it and then just couldn't stay open. So, I mean, I don't know who's gonna be hitting the bid to wanna do it, quite honestly.
I mean, Rob, and we were talking about the history of the last 3 years, we've had Rob was down there for years.
Right,
Yeah,
It's not that it's just been open for 3 years, he was there for a number of
He was-
years.
Rob is the owner of Uncle's down there.
But he,
right.
again, his hours were inconsistent, and one of them he would say, because I'm just not getting along. So it's been a conundrum, and that's where we thought if we brought in a new food operator with healthier options, et cetera, that would be, the ticket to turn it around. But
Would it be appropriate to say, looking at the data, discussing around the table, concessions are not a driving factor for people to come to Pear Tree Point. Therefore, at least as a finding of the commission and talking to folks, this is a potential opportunity to speak to the building committee on other uses of that space.
Yeah.
Right?
that would be my takeaway.
For the
Yeah.
commission, yeah.
Yeah, the commission.
The committee,
Pardon me.
to the
Yeah.
commission, that would be my, and when Cara and I first were like, there's always said that the results on the concession were definitely the muddiest, to really parse through between, the actual data where you're, the least to most satisfied, whatever, and then when you started reading everybody's comments, it was the most, where you're like, the messaging was definitely more mixed, but I think at the end of the day, with the raw data,
Mhm.
I think in terms of, priority, it did not scream as, people were like,
I don't think that we're gonna lose people at Pear Tree Point because there's no commission. So
Another
that-
way
that-
to put it,
that's
Chris.
the other one, so.
And I think the key thing, if we do decide or decides to close the concession stand, it's the communication. I think that consistency, I think it's more frustrating if somebody expects it's gonna be open and it's closed, to Cheryl's point, versus communicating well why we made this decision. And then I think in one of the questions, 70% say they bring their own food anyway, 20% use Uber Eats. And so I think people just plan around it, so.
Just kind of going back, talking about what Lori's saying about our charge as a committee. I think, and if we're gonna make a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think for me, then the number one thing would be, have we determined based on the information in the survey that we are not going to rebuild, we're not going to do a new construction. So I think that would be like the big takeaway for me, that we should take back to the commission.
I think what you take back to the commission is what this tells you. I think,
Well, we were supposed to make recommendations out of here based on
Right.
information in here, correct?
Mhm.
So would we be making a recommendation based on this information in our memo over there to start? You're not tearing it down. Or would you
I
work
think
with the
that's more of
existing-
a commission and or building committee decision.
But it could be,
We gotta make
it could be a
a
recommendation from this. I mean,
Recommendations,
Yes.
right?
we could
Yes.
recommend A, B, C, and D and give it to the commission. And then the commission can say, well, we're gonna go with D and E. And then you make up your rules, whatever you have to do to present it to the Board of Selectmen. So it's.
I mean, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance,
Look
they're
at
gonna look
this.
at this, it's gonna be really obvious.
Yeah.
Right, and I think in light of what's going on with Great Island, like, I think that, yeah, whatever, that.
I feel like we could do a statement that says, based on all of this information, it looks like it's really, let's fix this facility in the areas that are the highest request. And that seems to be around the bathrooms, the changing
And then go
areas.
into number two, number two then would be, well, it looks like the bathrooms, right? But that would be the number one priority, right?
Yes, and then seating outside, which goes to your point about having a patio area, outdoor showers. It did surprise me how low indoor showers were. Like I was thinking, I'm like, who's the youngest person in the room? But did they wanna did you wanna change your little toddler inside? And I then called up several of my younger friends with kids, and she's like, nope, we take them outside, we rinse them, that's what they do at Weed. They rinse the sand, they throw them in the back, and two of them carry their own little porta potty, because they're like,
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah,
going in
a
there,
lot
we're
of
not
people.
using,
But you
So,
have to do that.
Yeah, I used to.
Mhm.
so.
I think people
Of the green, baby Bjorn, little potty in the back of my wagon. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other reason we have to be careful
I
though of
experienced that
saying,
this summer.
this building versus a new build, remember, is we still, no matter what we do, have restrictions from FEMA in terms of how much can be spent, which is a function of the value of the building. We had some estimates, but meanwhile, costs have gone way up. So, at the end of the day, all that's gonna come into play,
Fair enough.
I think it would behoove the commission to get a new appraisal of that building as soon as possible, because I think the value of that building has gone up because of real estate. And somebody else said that to me a
I
while.
can't imagine
back.
what drive the value of that building.
Well, it's
Property itself.
the property,
Yeah, but the appraisal is just on the value of the building, it has nothing to do
but
with the
it's
land.
still,
To Cheryl's point, only because I got a new rate for my homeowner's insurance, I was like, how could the value of my building go up as it's depreciating? They said the cost of building materials are going up, and so that's why the appraisal value of the structures are going up, even though they're getting older, so I think there is merit
I think it
to.
would,
But that's for replacement value, effectively.
I didn't get into the weeds of the comments, but what suggestions are they
You
thinking
didn't
of?
read all of the comments? Come on, man, get out suburban or your beer or your
Any-
bottle of
any-
wine.
Any
and go through it.
suggestions on the bathroom and changing rooms, how they could be changed, that some people are saying how they could be changed, or could just make it look better, or
The
what?
last I got was people said they look dirty and
They should be
they're
gross.
really
Gross.
yeah, and
That's a
they
lot
just
of
look gross, was sort of
Right.
a lot of the comments. And I
More
think-
modernized.
Yeah.
well, we didn't get new
And they-
chairs.
They don't like the cinder block look or something?
Yeah, at least I can't speak to the men's room, but the ladies' room, I mean, the holes have been redilled and installed or so many times, because, stuff settles and then the little lock doesn't line up, so they drill new
Yeah.
holes.
I
It's
mean,
kind
even
of,
if you walk down to the boat club, right, there's two bathrooms are right next to each other, females and the males. They're not fancy, but you walk in, they're clean, you feel it, right?
Yep.
And that's all.
And
Right.
Weed Beach is the same, they're cinder block, but they just look clean and, so I think it's same fit and finish as Weed Beach and gets us there.
I mean, I didn't see what to complain about, for my part, I didn't see anything to complain about.
Easy
but-
guy. They're really-
They're low maintenance kind of guy. Low maintenance.
I was down there a few Friday nights ago, so you figure it's kind of the end of the day. The restrooms actually were open past 7 PM, which I was very thrilled about, so trotted over there maybe about 8 PM, and I was like, I thought they fine. I mean, in fact, in terms of, they didn't look dirty to me. So there were a lot of comments that they're dirty, and I
Did you go,
personally,
you went past after Labor Day?
no, this was, it might have been, I can't remember. It was a couple.
Less traffic, less.
No, I think it was before Labor Day, actually. I think it was before Labor Day. But,
Yeah, I know.
so I was a little surprised how many comments there were that it's not
clean. Yeah.
Right.
But it's,
I'm just curious,
it's a perception, right?
I think it's a perception.
Yeah.
They see a sink.
Yeah.
right, I was curious if anyone,
A lot of times they weren't clean.
And
A lot of times they were not clean.
Hold on one second. Janet, what were you saying?
I was just saying, I was curious if people had those complaints at all about weed? Or is it very obvious? I know that may not be captured in the survey, but I feel like the general perception is that weed is cleaner, even though it may not necessarily be a cleanliness comparison. It's just that people are used to feeling like Pear Tree bathroom is older or, needs repair or something. And so they feel, or if it's a cleanliness issue, I think that's
That has
something
nothing to do with a building committee. That's just how many times a week do we have?
right. Like we may need to,
But I think, right, to your point, I think Lori's made a similar point, even though people said they thought that they were dirty and clean, our perception is that they're clean to the same standards, but the rust makes it look dirty. Is the way
Yeah.
I interpret it.
Well, and the exterior is so unappealing that I think you go into it and you're just like, this place is horrible, the whole thing. So obviously changing the exterior will somehow. be helpful.
Well, I think that's where we have some landscaping. We talked about landscaping. I know Pear's, we had that artwork
Yeah.
banner there. We could have a rotating thing for that.
I mean, I think there
I
are
know
other
there-
things you could do with putting wood across it. I mean, there are
Right.
a bunch of things that could be
It
done.
was interesting to me, there were a lot of comments also about the condition of the gazebo, a lot.
Yeah.
That they really felt that was tired and needed to be refurbished and whatever. So, but again, I think that's not really a building committee project. That's a maintenance or,
Yes.
Yeah, right.
you get a builder with a little design, do you put some cute trim on it, or, I mean, whatever, I'm just making it up, but just that there were, when I think about the things that kind of struck me as I was reading through hundreds and hundreds of comments, it just, it was a lot of, I say, boys, if there are people who want berms, boy, there are a lot of people doesn't think the gazebo's up to snuff, a lot of comments about shade, a lot of comments about shade, so. But a lot of these, to me, these are not a big building committee, but these are just ongoing takeaways for the commission in terms of our prioritizing what we want to ask for in the capital budget. So some of that may go more just at the, the commission, this is what you need to be dealing with, as opposed to,
And the operating budget.
and the operating, as opposed to, the project that, in theory will include the parking lot and whatever, so.
see, that's another one where I feel like maybe that's just the nature of surveys, but the question around the specific question on question, part F, how satisfied are you with the gazebo? Only 2.3% of the people said not at all satisfied, and then 7% said not as satisfied. Most people said they were satisfied. So it's like we have to take into account maybe people who take the time to write something is because that's, something that bothers them. So but you do have to, I guess, kind of look at the macro, percentages.
There's definitely some interpretation. Okay, so I think we're getting close to out of time. So let's just go around the room if anybody has, I think in terms of next steps, why don't I take a crack at what I think I'm hearing is our collective recommendation? And can we work on it via email?
No.
No, we can't. Okay, I'll take a crack based on what people are saying, but I'm just only because I'm looking at you, Chris. Is there anything you want to add based on page 10? To what we just talked about?
No, I've got a top 4 takeaways that I think encompass a lot of what we've heard.
So let's
hear it.
let's hear it.
Basically, if I was putting together and saying what we've heard tonight, what we've read, what we've seen in terms of data, it's number 1 recommendation is that the town folks are not saying that they want to take down the building. Therefore, the next thing we've heard is they want to improve the building. That is interior and exterior, which we've seen right here. Bathrooms being more important than the exterior first. Then third would be when we're talking about, the exterior, it is a patio, it is furniture, and it is landscaping, and all of that can sort of be put together. The question being, which comes from, I don't know, special funds, or what funds we could potentially get, or an operating budget, what's there. And then the 4th takeaway to me was the concession stand isn't necessary.
Any?
think the town of Darien wants good-looking facilities, good, well-operating facilities. I mean, that's probably one of the prime motives of town fathers. And so going along, according to all of these suggestions in the, the top 5 or whatever, it's to me, it just looks like a matter of landscaping, beautiful, and well, the bathroom painted well and kept clean and well, that sort of thing. Nothing go in there and tear down the building or anything like that. Or let's just fix what's there to make it suitable for Darien.
Polish the aesthetics of what's there, not change the functionality.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sarah?
I'm with you guys, it's the same, I think that, number one, it's clear that we don't want to tear it down. We want to work with what's there, improving the bathrooms, then the exterior of the building. And I felt like there were so many comments on landscaping. I know that outdoor showers outranked it by a percentage point, but I just felt like in the comments, there were so many things on landscaping, whether it was shade or just into the berms or whatever. I just feel like that's going to be a huge priority for us as well. That's where I'm.
Good call, and I appreciate that so many people read through so many of those comments. I said it was an hour, but it was like a couple of hours. Over days. So, okay. Thank you, Sarah. All right, Janine.
Yeah, same takeaway, not to take down the building, improve what's there, bathroom priority. Inside first, outside after. If we remember from the new build proposal, the bathroom was gonna stay there anyway, and we were gonna fix the outside by putting materials on the outside. I think there's a lot of room for improving what's there and making it look good. Landscaping is just key. I think landscaping goes so far to make the whole area look great. And concession is just not necessary. We don't have to, the commission doesn't have to tear down the concession stand or do something different with it or decide, are we gonna make it a paddleboard rental place now instead? I mean, that doesn't have to be rushed into. It just doesn't have to be rushed into, we need to make a new building for a concession stand. We're establishing the concession stand is not a priority for the town. We don't have to tear it down, but we don't have to build a new one.
Bathrooms, and the outdoor shower, I think was important to a lot of people. I mean, again, if one was working, if 2 would be even better. And also the seating and some shade, awesome. And again, concession stand just is not necessary.
I concur.
Know?
Well, because I feel like I've given all my time, so in the essence of time and having to pick 2 kids up at the train at 9.
I concur with everything everybody said. I think it was an outstanding survey. I think we worked hard on the questions. I think we did a great job to get this out there. Pam did a great job on helping to make sure everyone was able to get this survey. And I think that it speaks volumes of not renovating the building. I mean, not knocking the building down and cleaning it up and making it a nicer place for the people, residents of the town of Darien. I do think that what I keep hearing down there and I keep seeing people sit on top of everybody is shade. And I think we need a lot more trees down there. And new sand. I'm still going after my sand.
Fair point. All right, Lori, just, I don't know.
I concur with what everybody said. I think the conclusions from the survey are pretty clear and will inform the decisions. I still personally believe a time is going to come that there will be a storm that is going to destroy that building because it is so close to the water now. And then we risk, by not acting now, we do risk losing the building, and then it'll be 2 or 3 or 4 years with nothing down there. I can see that happening. That's very close to what, that was the decision we had water completely through the building. And the board said we can either act now, go through the permits, and we went 1 summer with no building, as opposed to it would have been many years. So Personally, I think that's what will happen someday, and we have to accept that we could end up with porta potties for 3 or 4 years, but clearly now the mood is work with what we've got, but I think
Good thing we're
everybody's.
gonna have that, Pear Tree or Reed Beach expanded there.
Yeah.
Take
We'll
over
see
some
about
of
that, but I just think people need to be eyes wide open, the building is vulnerable, and we aren't talking about that as a group. The building is vulnerable. I mean, you've all seen the water lapping up on the northwest.
Yes, but so I
So
understand what
just-
you're saying, but for me, the takeaway is that's even more of a reason not to build some big fancy thing there.
No, because it would be
Yeah.
raised, if we have to build again, it'll be raised,
But so I
just like
think
all the
we-
people in the Rotten Bay raise their houses.
Right, but Reed Beach was designed so that the water can come into Reed
Yeah.
Beach, and that's why they moved the cinder blocks and put it
Right,
up,
right,
so I think.
I'm just
Some
saying, we have to
agreed.
understand that as we recommend any kind of updates to the
everybody on that
building,
front, right? Yes.
you know, we have to accept that that building is vulnerable to being damaged by a severe storm.
Agreed.
Okay.
And then the one thing I will say is, we voted on these things, right? Oxbridge was on its very last thing, but if their boiler went, we had to get them a
Mhm.
boiler. And so I feel like there's just way too many people, 82% really unhappy with the
No,
bathrooms.
I got you,
So-
Patty. I'm agreeing with all of
Okay,
that. And
okay.
I'm not saying I don't agree with the path I hear us going down, but I just want us to all do it with the understanding that this isn't necessarily a fix for the next 20 years.
No.
I hope it is, but it could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 months, it could be 6 years, none of us know. But, you know,
Fair enough. Okay, can I get Janet though?
Yeah, I actually, I concur with most of the conclusions, especially I'm so glad to see sort of, the town speaking up pretty resoundingly around the, construction or lack thereof that people would like to see. Certainly around knocking down the building. I think I will say that, maybe I'm not looking at the survey conclusion the summary document maybe everyone's looking at, and I apologize for joining last minute remotely, but from what I'm seeing, just like question by question, it's hard for me to tease out that, there's an overwhelming idea that people don't want a snack bar, or even like, just so not necessarily the concession stand that we're talking about with this kitchen and everything, just like like an alternative to that with a snack bar, but that's okay. Like, well, I think given that all the stuff that's going on with Great Island, that's coming down the pipeline, I'm sure it'll be fine. And so.
Okay. Andy is our guest, is there anything you would like to add?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to attend. I was very impressed by the quantity of responses. No, I was amazed, frankly. I'm a member of the RTM Parks and Rec Committee, so I don't really have a voice.
Okay,
But
well, thank you for coming tonight. Yeah. Okay, so, thank you all for tonight. I think this was great. I think, seems like everybody's landed in the same place. Unanimity is always a good thing. In terms of next steps, Lori, would you suggest that we make a recommendation and have a group presentation at the commission?
yeah,
Is there
I mean,
next
this
step?
group will need to meet at least once, if not twice, to kind of really formulate what that's going to look like.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so why don't I take a stab at it? We'll schedule a meeting for a couple of weeks and we'll go through what we think is going to be our recommendation to the commission. Okay, thank you.
Cara, thank you.
Cara, thank you so much for.
So, Everybody, we're still recording.
Okay.
So I can give this to Janet and then.
I will
What's missing?
email it to her.
Oh, okay.